Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of LFC Transfer Room. Tonight, Tonight, I'm joined by Brandon and Race. We are broadcasting live over Twitter and YouTube. So, you guys are over on Twitter. Please try and get yourself over to YouTube. We have lots of great content coming up over there. I want you to get liked and subscribed, all that good stuff. As I said, great content coming up. We've got Jurgen Klopp's tribute stream. We've got a season review coming up. And we've also got our transfer predictions for the summer window. And of course, we're going to have hit the pedal, go hard on the content for summer, because that's what we do. So, guys, first of all, Race, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. This is always a day, as you know, the Barcelona anniversary. It always just sticks with me and everyone, I'm sure, with the club. So it's nice to look back on these moments, especially as we get to the end of Klopp's tenure here. Just looking back, and this is probably one of the top 3 moments of his tenure here.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. Brandon, how are you, mate?
I'm doing all right. I'm kind of with races. It's one of those nice days to kind of look back on, especially with what's coming up in the next couple of weeks with the end of the Klopp era, just to kind of be excited to kind of talk and reminisce about some of the great moments of the Klopp era. Did we lose him?
No.
Fantastic. Well, we'll get straight to it then. As you already mentioned, it is the 5-year anniversary of probably one of the greatest nights in Liverpool's history. The Barcelona comeback from the miracle of Anfield back in 2019. So I reckon, I don't know about you two, but I reckon that night symbolises Jurgen Klopp's tenure at Liverpool. In these 9 years, he's always been on about doubts to believer. And I feel like that was the moment. That was the key moment in his time, connected the fans to the players, united the club. So I'll start with you, Brandon. Do you agree with that? Do you reckon that was the moment they all clicked for it, due to obviously the circumstances, the lack of key members of the squad, and of course the challenge we had to face?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think it was more the culmination of what he'd been building. It was like the moment, like we kind of got it started with the Dortmund comeback in Europe, was first, second year. There was also the moments like when we came back, and I know we got a lot of banter whenever we celebrated coming back and drawing against 2-2 against West Brom. But having those moments build up kind of the belief in the Barcelona game that we could do it. Like those moments that we had been seeding, it finally came to the point where we could harvest it for just one of the most magical nights any club in the world has ever had. So I think it was definitely the culmination of the doubters to believers, but like he'd been planting the seeds with it with other great moments leading up to it.
Exactly. That's very true. Race, same question to you. Do you believe that it was the peak of it all, that we brought it all together? As Brandon mentioned before, there was other moments like the West Brom game, the Dortmund game. We all remember that. They were all magical games for us, well, especially the Dortmund one. But the West Brom was the start of it after the game, trying to get the fans on side with the players. Do we think that Barca game was all of it coming together? Of course, things have happened since, but I felt that was the moment. That's what Klopp always wanted, to have the fans on side with the players through thick and thin.
Yeah, I think Brandon summed up great, and it was a kind of a culmination of just what we've been building. You look at where we were, as a team. Klopp's first year, was kind of a mess. Inherited the squad, reached Europa League final. The second year, we kind of scraped by in the final day just to get top 4, and then the next year was then when we were in the league race, when we were in the Champions League final. We won the Champions League. Wait, no, I'm blanking here. No, not quite. But anyway, it was the first year that we were really challenging for the league title, I should say. And so we were kind of seeing our team really, try to, peak on all fronts and compete for multiple trophies. And going into that game, I mean, look, you're going against Barcelona. You're down 3-0 against Messi, the best player in the world. Barca side that's still quality players all over. Even the side plot of Coutinho coming back to Anfield, all that. Just how much belief did everyone have? And I'll be honest, I didn't watch the first half of that game. I had other things to do personally, and so I didn't make it a priority to watch the game. Like, okay, we're down 3-0. Like, I can do this other thing real quick. I did come home for the second half. That's just how my day worked out in my schedule. So it wasn't a big deal that I missed the first half, but I obviously did watch the second half, and I'm just like, wow, it was incredible. Look, I get for a fan, on stateside here, you don't really get the full, at least I don't, the full atmosphere, the full, belief of the club. It's just a different feeling over here. I can speak for myself. But that was kind of my moment of like, wow, this is a special moment, a special time, a special place in this club's history. And look what Klopp has built. I mean, there was, no. I mean, I couldn't believe, coming back from 3-0 down from against one of the best teams in the world. It was just, incredible for him to have that belief. And again, no Salah, no Firmino, right? No, or was it no Mon? No, there's no Firmino. Robertson even came off at halftime because he was injured. They had to bring on Wijnaldum, who, of course, that was the sub of the century right there. I mean, he completely turned the game around. It was just an incredible moment. One of those storybook type of evenings. And of course, with the corner taken quickly, Origi. I mean, that's all etched in our brains forever. And that really kicked on, I felt, kind of us at our peak. The Liverpool team at our peak. The next year, of course, we go on to win the league title. And then we're always a constant threat for the season last year, but the quadruple season and whatnot. I mean, it really was kind of the coming to light moment for Jurgen Klopp's team. Maybe the Champions League final appearance the season before, but this was okay, we got a squad. We are we're here. We've arrived. We are one of the best teams in the world. I just think it was just a wonderful moment. Just heroic performances all over the pitch. I remember when we were over the summer, we were talking about Henderson's, his exit, and kind of what was the Jordan Henderson moment? Like, what's kind of a moment that sticks out in your mind of Jordan Henderson? This is kind of one of those games where, just kind of putting everything on the line, getting the, sort of creating that first goal that Rigi had. He put the shot on and then Rigi tapped it in. It was a moment for like that, for everyone just leaving it all out on the pitch. You see everyone's just dead at the full-time whistle, kind of laying around. And of course, the singing with the crowd afterwards, "You'll Never Walk Alone." It's just a tremendous occasion for the club. And it's also easily rememberable for me too, because tomorrow's actually my birthday. And so this is kind of aligns right with that day. So it's kind of a, easy to remember type situation. So it was an early birthday gift for me at the time. So I certainly appreciate Liverpool giving me that memory, right around that time.
Well, first of all, happy birthday for tomorrow. But yeah, I think that would have been extra special. Like I say, perfect birthday present, of course. Brandon, well, hey, Streamlight decides to fall over. Brandon, tell me, do you reckon that any other manager would have brought that type of performance out of a squad that would have been on it? Let's be honest, it would have been on its arse. Yes, we had a massive victory the weekend before against Newcastle, I remember. But to go to the new camp and then come away after a good performance, let's be honest, against Barcelona away, but we come away 3-0 down. Could have been 4-0. Luckily, it wasn't. Do you reckon any other manager would have got the best, that type of performance out of them players? Or do you reckon somebody else could have done it? But personally, I don't think they would have done, because Jurgen Klopp is that type of manager, gets every little bit out of the players he has available. But what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if any other manager could have got that performance out. I'm kind of with you, like how deflated I was after that first leg, because we had played really well and somehow we were 3-0 down going back home. Like, it was just, and I think that's after Company's goal against Leicester, and like it really at that moment kind of really felt like we're going to put up 98 points in the league and come away with 0 trophies this season. It really was that deflating of a moment. Like, this whole season, this incredible run we've been on, we're going to come away with nothing. And then I'm with you that I think just the way Klopp is as a person and the way he manages, that was really the only manager who could have really put that type of performance in. Because it wasn't just like it was a couple fluke goals or it was just a 2-0 we had to turn around. It was 4-0 and it was a drubbing. We really were all over them at all points. It was heavy metal football at its finest. It was in your face and loud screaming, like the fans were immense. That's like that is definitely the closest, kind of like what Ray said, is like really being connected to the club over here in America. Like, really, I'm at work, working a bar, and I'm telling people, no, you got to wait 10 minutes before I'm ready to give you a drink because this game's got to finish before I get back to work. So, like, I have to, like, it was really the closest I've ever felt to actually being at Anfield. That's how great the crowd was. It was like kind of mentioned that culmination of really building that belief with the fans, like really coming through. Klopp's really kind of the only manager I can think of that really instills that type of connection for the entire club, fan base, players, boardroom, everybody kind of really connected into that moment.
Yeah, exactly. I fully agree. It brought, like I say, the connection with the team and the manager and the whole club was just so much stronger after that game, and rightfully so. I want people in the comments to tell me if they have their own, but I feel like this. I've got a little boy, and I'm hoping he comes up to a Liverpool fan, a football fan. I'd even take just a football fan, but hopefully he becomes a Liverpool fan. I'll be telling him this story when he's 18, 19. I'll grow up with him telling about that game, because I don't think anything will top that game personally. The emotions I went through in that 90 minutes was stark. Went into, like I said before, so deflated, just thinking, just win on the night, just send me home happy type of thing. And by the end of it, I just felt like I was dreamed. I must have been knocked out. There's no way we've done it. Is this that game the moment that nothing will ever beat that moment? Do you think that's the game that sums up your love for the club? Your one moment of being a Liverpool fan? I'll start with you, Race. Is that the moment for you? If you could choose any moment of being a Liverpool fan for how long you have been a fan, is that there as the top, or is there another one?
I would think it is. For me personally, just looking at other moments that we've had, when we won the Premier League title in that summer, I personally didn't see any of those games in lockdown, just because where I was at and with my schedule. Like, I just didn't see any of those games. I didn't see the trophy lift. I didn't see anything. So that moment just doesn't stick with me as much. Obviously, it's still a tremendous, accomplishment. And then winning the Champions League as well. We went up against Spurs. We were favored. It was kind of I don't want to say an underwhelming final, but there just wasn't a lot of a lot of hype, at least for me personally, and I can only speak for myself. So it really was that Barcelona moment that really felt like, that was kind of a final type atmosphere type matchup, right? It was the other tie was Tottenham and Ajax. That was kind of how did they get there? It was us, Liverpool, and Barcelona. Those were kind of the two big guns there. So that really was kind of the defining moment of that Champions League campaign for me. And so, yeah, I would say that's kind of my top moment. Just again, the coming back from 3-0 down with a shorthanded team, seeing the reaction afterwards, just seeing the again, the singing with the cup end. It's an incredible, the Mo Salah never give up shirt. Everything about Klopp's tenure with Liverpool, it kind of defined in that moment, I believe, of just everyone coming together, everything just kind of working out, the impact substitutions, and someone stepping up in the biggest moments. You're Trent's coming up with the play of the game there. Your future star in the team, if he wasn't already a star. It really was the perfect moment for Klopp's team. So it's just always awesome to look back on that moment, and I would say that is, for me, the defining moment of my fandom of Liverpool.
Yeah, perfectly summed up. I fully agree. It's definitely one for me as well. Like I say, every moment sums up what the club is about. Going into it with virtually no belief, the power of Anfield was used from minute one. Klopp getting every little minute, every little drain of energy out the players he could. They were on their knees at the end of the game, and then, like I said, to cap it all off, the United moment of singing of "You Never Walk Alone" in front of the cops. It's all magical. Brandon, same question to you. Is it your personal moment in LFC history? Do you reckon that is our greatest game in our history, considering all the circumstances for you personally?
I think since obviously I wasn't a fan for Istanbul, that'd be the only game I think truly could match up to this game would be obviously the Steven Gerrard final in 2005. That would be the only thing, but obviously I wasn't a fan then. The only game I could think of personally would be maybe that Dortmund game, because kind of like I said, it was the moment where you really felt something was being specially built by Klopp, and one of the most maligned players we've ever had, Dejan Lovren, scoring the winner. It was a really key moment, but just the circumstances just really outweighs with the Barcelona game. Kind of what Ray said, the never give up shirt. The Origi, who hadn't really ever got the kick on at Liverpool, coming up in the biggest moments like he has. Even Sheridan Shaqiri getting himself assist, he had really kind of fallen out of favor, and then also he just pops up in this game, delivers a great ball. Wijnaldum coming off the bench is like the greatest sub in Champions League history, and just really doing the job and winding up Suarez, who, as great as a player Suarez is, I hate his guts. It's just it's really nice to, especially the way he kind of celebrated in a couple players' faces. And the other leg for us to kind of come back and just kind of really put it on him, and obviously Coutinho angling for his move. There's just too much to the story of the Barcelona game for it not to be like the key moment of my fandom at Liverpool. It's just there's just too much going on with, and obviously getting over the line, which we couldn't do after the Dortmund game against Sevilla, where we got to against Spurs. Like it really just does make it like the key moment of my, well, I guess like 15 years now of being a fan.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's a weird one, isn't it? With especially under Klopp, I feel like our semi-finals have been, or not necessarily the build up to the finals, been better than the actual finals themselves. It's quite strange. We all love special moments at Liverpool. It stick with us forever. And like you say, it's what's part of being a Liverpool fan. But anyway, before we move on to our second category, or second topic, I should say, we've got just shy of 1,400 people watching us across 2 platforms. Guys, if you're on Twitter, get across to YouTube. Join us in the comments. Tell us what you think. If you have a special moment of being a fan at Liverpool, tell us it. Come on, let us know. But anyway, from the past to the present, Bakayoko from PSV, a name we've probably all heard of by now. We were linked with him last summer. We're now being linked with him again for a reported 50 million euros, about 45 million quid. I'll start off with you, Brandon. Do you reckon that is a goer? Do you reckon that is one we'd probably go for? Or do you reckon it's probably going to be a bit too much to shell out for someone's potentially going to be second choice, especially for the first year anyway?
I don't think so. I think with the modern market, I mean, we're seeing guys who have had like 5 games at the senior level going for like $30 million or 30 million pounds, however you want to say it. Like, I don't think it is. Bakayoko is kind of a really highly rated young player. He's really stepping up there with PSV. I think he's doubled his goal tally this year. Like, I think it would be, I mean, I don't think 50 million's out of the realm. It's pretty much par for the course if you want to get quality in the team. And obviously, if he's playing that right-hand side, Mo is probably closer to going than he is to staying. Not this year, I'm talking about by the end of his contract. That it is, it's better to kind of get him in now, get him acclimated to new management, new style of play, new league, new country, than, wait till Mo leaves to bring him in and try and say, hey, now you got to replace this void, without having the expectation going in where he kind of build himself up to take that spot instead of just being dropped in to that spot and say, now you got to fill the shoes that Mo Salah's leaving, or well, however it happens. I think 50 million in the modern market is not as overwhelming as it would have been 5-6 years ago.
No, you're very much correct. The market is still slightly inflated. I think it's still a different market than it was probably a year ago with the whole profits and sustainability rules coming in, but it's still inflated. There's still big money going to be thrown around, especially by certain clubs anyway. I won't name who. But anyway, just before I go to you, Race, about it. Paul, I think it was a penalty. The one I was assuming around about the Spurs final when we won it. I can see what you're saying. But under the rules, which are slightly different to the Premier League rules, the Champions League rules, under that category, it is a penalty, or was a penalty, I should say. Race, then, what do you think of Bakayoko? Like I say, you've been linked with him before in the past. Do you think he'd suit us? I think he's left-footed, plays on that right-hand side, electric pace, but plays in the Netherlands. We very hit and miss the Eredivisie. Obviously, you've got your Luis Suarez's, but you've also got your Antony's. Which one do you reckon he's more close to?
Yeah, it's tough. It's you just hope with our track record of picking up players from some of these lower leagues that we can, make it work out. Of course, it's going to be a new manager, so who knows if it will work out. And you always have to make sure your scouting is right. And I think Gakpo is kind of a good example of came in, he looked good, and then kind of this season's been all right, but I think you still have a good quality player there. So, I'm not too concerned about the league jump, just because there are, success stories. And, look, we're not Manchester United. We're not going to completely miss on our transfers like Antony. Like that's, we're a much more stable, sound club, especially with Michael Edwards back in the fold. So, I'm more confident in the players we do bring in. So Bakayoko, talked about him in the past before, especially on this channel. I don't think the price is that egregious. I think, the transfer market, you're going to get, inflated prices, and you're going to pay a little more for a player because that's just how business and clubs operate. They're not going to be cheap for players, especially young talent as well. They're going to put an extra tax on them just because they are younger and they have that potential. But he is, he has 14 goals, 14 assists this season in all comps, basically doubled from last season. So it's good to see that improvement. Still only 21 years old. He just turned 21 too. So he's still a young lad out there. And so if you can bring him in, and it's understood that he would be, kind of a backup to Salah, if he's fine with that, that would be an ideal situation. Because again, you don't just drop a player right in and expect him to perform, especially a younger player coming to the Premier League for the first time, a winger coming for the first time. And he's not like a world-class talent, he's not like, setting the world on fire, but that's the ideal situation. Of course, you have to just keep, Salah in mind and say, hey, Salah's our guy here for now. But we do have a spot for you in the future. And so if that's something that's comfortable for both parties to agree upon, I think that's a tremendous, situation. That's perfect. You want to have someone kind of waiting in the wings, literally pun intended, to kind of come up and be the next guy up. And so I don't think it's a bad idea to spend money on depth. Like that's how, Man City becomes so good. They just spend loads of money. Again, they have loads of money, so they just spend, whatever. But ideally, you can spend money in these backup positions, and then eventually, if there's patience on both sides, it'll work out in the end. It'll be, become quite a bargain. And so, especially for a winger that's attacker that's has a good scoring output, you have to pay a little bit. And so, I'm certainly comfortable with Bakayoko. I like. The player profile, left-footed as well, it fit on that right side. If we're more of a 4-2-3-1 and it's kind of a right midfielder pushing to a right winger, I'm sure we can work with that as well. But in terms of setup, I think there's a spot for him on this team. So I'm very, very interested to see what our priority in terms of buying a kind of a winger. Of a solid replacement. I think there's other, positions to go after first, kind of, get a center back, get a number 6, ideally. I think those are all more positions of priority. But if there is some money on the table for this position, if you have the thought in mind that Salah will be leaving, next season, that summer 2025, then certainly it's wise to divert some funds to this position because, of course, it's going to be an important position to fill when Salah leaves.
Exactly. I think going to replace anybody the likes of Mo Salah is going to be tough, not just for Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, but for the player himself to be told that you're going to be the successor, you're going to be the next in line. Big shoes to fill is a bit of an understatement. Mm-hmm. I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate type thing here. Let's say Richard Hughes says to Arne Slot next season, look, we're going to get you a right winger, but you're going to have to sell one of your forwards. I'll start with you, Brandon. Who would you sell? You got to choose one.
It would probably be Diaz just because of the age. And you feel like Diaz is probably at the level that he is at. And there's not much improvement. He can improve a little bit more on his finishing, but being at the age he is, I don't see that being a huge jump. He's not going to put 30 goals past somebody next season or, in all competitions. It's just not who he is as a player. I like Diaz a lot, the way he ball carries. He really can carry the ball from the midfield into the attacking third very well. His form, after I think it was around January, really took an uptick, and he was one of the better attackers we had for a little bit. But I think just with the age profile and where he fits in, I think that would be the one to move because we have so many guys who can go out there on the left-hand side and really play. Even players who haven't, like Dominic, can go out to the left-hand side if he needs to. Cody seems to be, in my opinion, much better on the left-hand side. Even Darwin can go out to the left-hand side. It feels like that's where we really have a plethora. And if you're looking at the players we have there, I just feel like Diaz is the one that would be the one you can get good profit back from what you bought him for originally. And then also kind of where he's at age-wise and development-wise, that would be the guy you'd probably move on.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I'd probably agree with that. I've been on stream a few times about Luis Diaz. I like that. He works his arse off. He really does. But his output is limited and it's not really scalable. It doesn't seem... It has improved slightly this season, granted, but it's still not enough. His conversion rate's really poor. And I think if someone comes in with, your 50, 60 million potentially, you're going to make a profit easily on him. And he is going to just 27, 28. Whereas, obviously, that's not old for a football player going into his prime. Whereas Cody Gakpo is 23, 24. You're going to stick with him a bit longer. Nunes the same. As much as some people won't like that, you're going to stick with him because you're not going to get the money back what we paid for him yet. He'll only improve hopefully next season. And I feel like Diaz would probably be an easier one to move on if someone offers the money. So, Race, Paul's put one in the comments. If you had a choice, Bakayoko or Kudus, if the money's the same, which one would you go for?
Remind me of the Kudus fella again. I'm sorry, I'm blinking.
One place for West Ham on that.
West Ham guy.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. Yeah, because the detractors of Kudus obviously being in the Premier League and being more of a quote proven commodity. That's an intriguing option. The only thing is, I would imagine the price for Kudus would be a little bit more, just because it's a Premier League club selling to you, and they're gonna hike that price up. So honestly, I think that's what it'll come down to. What's his release clause?
We don't know exactly, but he's confirmed to have a release clause. I'm going to suspect around the 70 mark, personally.
Okay. So if the release clause is something that's, if it's 70, I don't know. It's a tough one, to be honest. I think it comes down to what's that extra 20-ish million. What does that mean to you? If it's a player that's in the Premier League and, is someone that you like versus someone who's out of the league, maybe, is you just like more. I mean, that's a tough one, to be honest. I mean, it really comes down to the price, what you're more willing to pay. So I can't say for certain which player I'd rather have. I'm sitting on the fence here, I know, but it really just comes down to the price and what you're willing to pay. If you're willing to pay a little more just because a player has been in the Premier League, if that's what it comes down to, if the player comp is pretty similar, as the one's been performing in the Premier League, a little bit less goal output, but I don't know. It's a good question. I'll leave it up to Paul to decide on that one.
It's certainly a tough one because there's pros and cons to both. Bakayoko's a left-footed, Kudus isn't. So would Kudus be able to play on the right? Bakayoko can, but you could argue also Kudus is more versatile. But do we need that? Like you mentioned before, we've got a plethora of left wingers, players who can play on that left-hand side and up front. It's one of them, but obviously Kudus is Premier League proven, Bakayoko is not. Those are things to juggle up, but obviously the data is there for the guys who actually make the big decisions, and we'll leave it in their hands. Tony has also pointed out another option who has a release clause, Elise, who got 2 goals last night after Man United lost 4-0. Lovely jubbly. So what is your thoughts on Michael Elise, Brandon? Is that someone else you would consider? The only thing I would worry personally about him, I think he's class. I watched him last night, like I say, 2 really good goals. He scared the living daylights out of Casemiro multiple times. But the only worry I have, it's not the price, because I think it's fair market value, about 60 million for his age and profile. It's his injury record. It's really concerning. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm exactly with you on that. It's the injury is the only thing that keeps me from going, we should be all in on Elise. Like that'd be of, proven players who's kind of been the main guy. Like, if you're looking for somebody to replace like Mo Salah, who's been a main guy forever, have somebody who has been one. And that's what Elise kind of is at Crystal Palace. He is like the guy they're kind of really built around, or really hope can carry them farther up the table. I really love watching him play. He's such a fantastic player, but that injury history is the one that really keeps me from saying, yeah, we need, because if it's between the 3, Bakayoko, Kudus, and Elise, he'd probably be 3rd because of the injury issues. I know some of that's not his fault. I know there was a game earlier this season where it was obvious he shouldn't be playing, and they put him out in the second half, and 9 minutes later he had to come off because he'd hurt his hamstring again. So, I mean, that's not completely down to him. That's more down to the coaching or just the training staff trying to force him back into at that point was a relegation scrap. Yeah, I think I would take Kudus over Bakayoko just because he is a little more proven. And the versatility you kind of talked about, having somebody who can kind of play through the center, even go up top if he needs to, play on the right, even go to left if we need him, kind of cutting in. I like Kudus a lot, and he's been also one of those players worth the price of admission to watch a West Ham game when they don't play the most beautiful brand of football. He's still worth watching, kind of like Paqueta or Bowen, which a lot of that team is actually worth it if it wasn't for their style. But yeah, I think Elise, I like that guy a lot, but yeah, I'm with you. Injuries is just the one thing really holding me from like diving all in.
Yeah, exactly. I fully agree. John also mentions Eze. I think he's exactly the same as Elise. I think he's quality play, he's versatile, but it's his injury record once again. I think Palace have got two absolute gems, but the legs are going to fall off the way they're going, unfortunately. Hopefully they get better for the sake of their careers, and hopefully they do get a big move because they deserve one. They both are clearly their best players when you watch them, especially in the moments. But anyone withholding any money for any club is going to sit there and go, how many games they have missed in their career so far is quite concerning. They can also put Pedro Neto in there every time he plays for Wolves on that left-hand side or even the right-hand side. I am a massive fan of Neto, but I'm scared his leg's going to fall off every time he plays for Wolves. And he's been out for the last few months and he's been out for the season. It's such a shame these young players who will get big moves eventually. It just hasn't happened for him yet because of that injury record. So this is going to be an open question to anybody in the comments and also to YouTube. Forget money for a second, but apply a bit of realism at the same time. If you're Slot and you want a right winger, you're going to Richard Hughes and Edwards saying, I want a right winger. Who would you want personally? Money's no object, but apply a bit of realism at the same time. I don't want you to go out and just go say, even though I won't like him, go say Neymar or something like that. That's not going to happen. Let's be real. There is a profile in place. Is there a right winger out there that you would want? Start with you, Race. Is there anyone in particular that screams to you that, yeah, Liverpool should go get them? I think he'd be a perfect fit.
I see Paul's mentioned him in the comments. I like Kubo from Sociedad. I think he's a really good player. I think, check his numbers here again. Was looking at him. I know he signed a new deal. I know we're going to talk about money here much, but he could be an interesting, guy to bring again, more of a natural right winger, left-footed. I think he's played some striker for them as well, so he can play through the middle if need be. He's an intriguing option. I think, playing in La Liga too, that's obviously a quality league over there, but he's one that I certainly, I like him as well. And then Bakayoko, I've actually, fancy him as well. I think he's a player, to look at. And, I've just kind of like, I'm more of a true kind of right winger mold. I know versatility is a good thing, but I think as an attacker, it's good to have kind of your niche on the field and kind of where you operate. I kind of like that. Of course, being able to play in different positions is obviously a good thing. But I certainly, I know it's you're not going to replace Salah, his production, his availability, and all that. That's an impossible task. But the best you can do to replace that, I think, is a good thing. I think having a player that's kind of wants to make that position his position is a positive. So Kubo, Bakayoko are a couple options for me. I can't say I have too much of a pulse on the right winger market right now, but certainly a younger player, someone to look to come in, and Kubo as well. He's turning 23 this summer, so certainly a player who's been around a bit. He's made a bunch. Was on his second season in Sociedad, so I'd say Kubo and Bakayoko are kind of up on the list for me.
No, that's fair enough. I know Kubo has a release clause of similar to the asking price of Bakayoko. It's like the 50 to 60 pound mark. He renewed his contract, but the release clause stayed the same. I think it was just more the fact of reaffirming his commitment to stay at least another season, ready for that big move potentially this summer. I do think that was somebody we'll probably look at. There's been reports that we've carried out due diligence. We've asked about him. So I think he's definitely on the list. Tony's also mentioned Rodrigo in the comments, and that's dream territory, I think, even though it's not quite Vinny Jr. on that left-hand side, but Rodrigo is class, and I don't see Real Madrid letting him go, unfortunately, but he would be really ideal. Definitely take him. Brandon, what do you reckon? Like I say, same question. Is there anybody that screams to you? Would you take a Kubo? Would you take... Well, you'd take a Rodrigo, I'm sure you would. But is there anybody else that comes to mind, a right winger for Liverpool, who would suit us down to the ground?
Kind of the players we have been kind of mentioning here. Kubo, Bakayoko. I think Kudus would be like number one, like just having the proven like track record there. With the Rodrigo thing, if you wanted somebody to really be dropped into a squad ready to go, be like maybe next summer if they can't figure out how to fit all their attacking players in, and maybe he's, you know what, I want to be playing more often. Maybe that could become more realistic, but this summer not really realistic. When they get like Endrick and Mbappe, everybody that they're going to have the embarrassment of riches they'll have, and who knows, next summer probably Holland on their shopping list, and then yeah, maybe that becomes much more realistic, Rodrigo. But yeah, if we're being realistic for this summer, kind of who we've been talking about, Bakayoko, Kubo, Kudus, that would be kind of the top three. I think Kudus would be my number one moving forward. At the same time, if Ulis wasn't hurt all the time, he would be my actual number one. But Kudus would be my number one heading into the summer, if actual realistic targets we can go get.
That's fair. This is just my mini prediction. I reckon if Diaz moves on, I think we go for Kudus, just for the fact of release clause, Premier League ready, play on that left-hand side. I think he'd be perfect. I think Kubo's definitely going to be on a short list of some sort. He just has all them attributes, very good on the ball. He could be lethal under the right coaching. And there's also a lad in Brazil. I don't know if you read any of the reports in the recent weeks. I don't know his first name. It's Guilherme. He plays for Race. I don't know if you heard of him. It's not Santos he plays for, but there's a Brazilian club he plays for. We got linked to him a couple of weeks ago. He's only 18, 19, but he's already making big numbers, and a lot of clubs are starting to look at him. He's got a release clause, and I reckon we'd probably be looking at that. Someone who's, like say, 18, 19, who's not quite ready for regular games in the Premier League, but someone who's definitely going to get some games and would be willing to wait around on the bench and whatnot. I think it's Palermias he plays for or something like that.
Yeah, Palermias.
Sure. Is that the one?
Yeah, it is.
I definitely think you'll be on the list. It'd be one team I have personally.
Yeah, we talked about him on stream a couple weeks ago when I was. I can't remember what it was.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Yep. So someone's mentioned about. Do you think do you think Sancho would have done how would Sancho done with Klopp as his manager? It's a tough one. I think his attitude is very inconsistent. When things aren't going right, his head seems to drop. And I don't think that would have suited Klopp down to the ground. There's a reason why we probably didn't push for him. I think the wages would have been the big one. But quickly on this one, guys, what do you reckon? What do you think Sancho would have fitted in here at Liverpool? Or do you reckon, same to me, do you think his attitude wasn't quite right, hence why it hasn't worked out at United? I know it was a poison chalice, but the fact that as soon as the manager didn't fancy him, he just kicked off a storm, and then he obviously upped and left to Dortmund. What do you reckon, Brandon?
Yeah, he would have fit in great on the bench. He would have been great to sit there on the bench behind everybody else we have. Like, I don't know. I like Sancho. I think he was great at Dortmund. It's just he would never have displaced Salah. So, I mean, he just never would have got the game time. I know he can go out maybe on the left and stuff like that, but at the same time, when he's coming in, we have Mane out on the left. He's not displacing Mane. So he would have been kind of a fourth option, and it could have been when we had Coutinho and we had Firmino, Salah, Mane, and we couldn't really make that attacking work without being defensively kind of very fragile. So I think to make room for Sancho, it probably would not have worked as a team. Like I said, I like the talent he had, but I'm kind of with you with the attitude, and also I just don't think he was ever going to be better than what we already had at that point.
That's fair enough. Race, what do you think? Do you agree with me and Brandon, or would you go a different way?
I think, yeah, just looking at, well, he moved to United for the 2021 season. So that was right before that was a season we were coming back from the dreadful COVID year. But I think there is a scenario that he could have worked out, just given how strong, the dressing room is, and the leaders that we have, in terms of mindset. You wonder what a manager like Klopp would have done to him. You just look at the circumstance, like bringing him in as a big money transfer. I mean, you just wonder how that, a player deals with that, like, oh man, I'm the man, this is my time to shine, but I think though, just kind of the personality of a player, it matters. I mean, the transfer we do, like, we don't go for the big, egos or the big wage demanders and stuff like that. Realistically, like that's just not the type of player that we bring in. So was Klopp willing to work with a player like that, sort of a squad player to try and get into the first team and become a regular starter? I don't know. I don't think so. I think, Sancho right now, he's just enjoying life outside of Manchester United right now. He's like, finally, I get a little time to breathe and just not be in that mess of things, and kind of going back to his roots. Sometimes as a player, you admit that you make a mistake and you go somewhere that maybe you shouldn't have. So I'm sure he's just glad to be back in Dortmund and enjoying, playing football again. So I don't think a long shot for him to work out at Liverpool. Realistically, I don't think there was a chance that he would have been a good player, just given his attitude of things.
Seems we're all on the same page, but I'm sure even Sancho will agree with us. We're all laughing at Man United right now, and hopefully continues next season as well. But before we quickly move on, Paul's mentioned Jared Bowen. Now, just a quick one on this. I think the only way we'd go for someone like Bowen is if Salah leaves now and we want someone to come straight in, personally, straight in, ready to go. I think he wouldn't sit on the bench. He's quite versatile. He can play up front. I don't know if it would suit Slot's system. I'm not entirely sure. But he'd be big money. West Ham's probably best player, but alongside Paqueta. I think it's just it's such a shame. He deserves a big move, but I can't see Liverpool, City, or even Arsenal going for him. Unfortunately, he'll have to go to like a Spurs or a Man United or something like that to get a big move, or even abroad. He deserves a big move, but I don't think it's an option, unfortunately, Paul. But before we move on to our last topic, I'll just remind everybody who's on Twitter, got 2,300 people watching across both platforms. Guys, please go over to YouTube, please subscribe, please like, all that good stuff. Like I said, we've got a lot of content coming up. You want to be involved with it, it's going to be great. So the last topic, Cody Gakpo's had a little chat with a journalist. Someone's asked him about how the squad feels and how he feels personally about Arne Slot coming into Liverpool next season. So the world's worst kept secret right now. We're all just waiting for it to officially to be announced. I suspect as soon as the last game's done, that's when it will happen. I also respect for both clubs. But surely what he's been saying is positive. He's come out and said he's very curious about the appointments, but he's also, more importantly, has stated that the whole team, the whole squad, is looking forward to working with Arne Slot next season. Brandon, there's surely music to all of our ears. We all went into this worried that after Virgil van Dijk's comments earlier in the year that no one was committing themselves to next season. No one knew what was going on. Obviously, the fans didn't, and even they didn't. So, of course, there was going to be some worry and trepidation going into it. But it's definitely a massive relief to hear that the squad are looking forward to working with Arne Slot next season.
Yeah, that's the key to kind of keep the squad harmony kind of moving forward. Obviously after kind of tumultuous past 6 weeks or so, kind of everybody taking a kind of assessment and saying, we've got an opportunity here to continue what Klopp's kind of laid down for us to build into the next season under Slot. I'm not super worried. I think I'm pretty excited about Slot coming in. It might be nice to kind of freshen everything up. Our ideas, also our structure. It should be a very fascinating time as we transition from the Klopp era into a new era. And having the players on board, like that obviously is much easier. And hopefully they can identify if there's players who are not on board and we can get them out of the club and we don't hopefully fall into another kind of dry spell or what United's going through right now, because we don't want to get rid of riffraff, or we don't have everybody buying in, which is kind of the issue is with a lot of teams is once you have the big manager and he leaves, people not buying into the new manager. So hopefully that's something we can avoid, or if we can't avoid it, we identify it early enough that we can get it out before it really becomes an issue.
Yeah, exactly. I think making the current squad happy and hearing that they're excited, they're intrigued to work with a new manager is just as important as transfers, just as important as getting new lads in. And I think it's vital going forward. It minimises any sort of transition. We're going to have a transitional season to a point. I thought this season was going to be our transitional season with the new midfield. Of love and behold, we're going to have another one to a point. And I think it will minimise it, keeping our best players like your Trent, your Allisons, your Van Dijks, and Salah. I think it's going to be a massive help. Race, same question to you. It's got to be a massive boost, hasn't it? To hear that Van Dijk said it yesterday, he was looking forward to working with Slot. And like I say, Gakpo mentioned that the whole squad's looking forward to it. How does it make you feel as a fan? Does it give you a bit of relief? Just relax you that little bit going into the summer, thinking, right, we've gone from potentially losing Trent, potentially losing Van Dijk, potentially losing Salah to like, it looks like we're going to keep everybody. I know there's small question marks on a couple, but the major players look like they're settled and they're raring to go for next season.
Well, I'm not surprised that the Dutch internationals, Van Dijk and Gakpo, have good things to say about our incoming Dutch manager. I think that's a kind of a given. You know, you're always going to speak well of your fellow countrymen, even if they don't know him personally. You know, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of connections, you know, when they speak, and, you know, some sort of youth coach, or, you know, there's going to be some connection that they can bond over. So that's good, especially, you know, from your captain as well. You know, that's the leader in your dressing room, you know, him getting his, you know, not that we need a public approval of it. I mean, maybe I don't need it, but, like, you know, I always, you know, assume that these guys are professionals. They know that times are changing. Klopp gave them, you know, the proper time. You know, he's like, hey, I'm leaving at the end of the season. You know, he told them in January, like, okay, so that gives them proper time to find a replacement, and respects their wishes as well. He's not just gonna a shock leave, you know, in June, like, oh, I'm done. You know, that's the way to do it. You know, you let the club know of your plans when you're at Klopp's stature of, you know, success, and, you know, he can come back whenever he wants, you know. So it's good to you know, see that respect just kind of pass through, you know, the team. I personally was never worried about any players, I don't know, leaving or being kind of you know, having distaste about this. Like, it's, you know, it's part of being a professional. There's new managers that cycle in and cycle out, even if even the most established ones. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see just how, you know, the way we set up, the way we play, you know, what players does Slot, you know, kind of fancy, like, oh, cool, I really like what this player does, I'm going to put him in this spot here. You know, I really like, you know, what you do here. What we're going to see, I think, in the next year, in next season, is, you know, there could be one or two players that, you know, could be surprised to see, you know, go on their way out, because they're not going to, you know, the manager's not going to, you know, think this player fits my style of play. I don't like what they do, you know, and you know, I'm going to replace you with someone who does this better. You know, I think that's what might happen in the future. But for now, going into the season, I think you're going to have everyone, you know, kind of on board and giving this new manager a chance. I mean, the worst thing you can do as a player is, you know, you have this new manager coming and you're just not going to give him a chance like these. That's not what, you know, again, it comes down to what Klopp's built here. You know, he's built a team, a dressing room full of players that are respected professionals. They're not, you know, big attitudes, big egos, anything like that. Like, they understand, you know, how things work. And I think you're just starting to see the players starting to realize, like, yeah, this is, you know, this is happening. This is gonna, yeah, it sucks that Klopp is leaving, but we're attacking this head on. You know, I mean, there's no reason to believe that they shouldn't be optimistic, because, like, we were just a month ago, we were in the title race with this squad. You know, just a few tweaks here and there, you know, with this manager comes in, like, we in theory have the squad to compete for a Premier League title next season, right? I think we all, you know, still some additions need to be made and some minor, you know, changes here and there, but by and large, like, we have a tremendous squad at our disposal, especially with our new midfield. They're going to be going on a second year in the Premier League, and just kind of as a group together and just kind of adjusting. The front line, you know, maybe there needs to be some refreshment with bringing in a new player and whatnot. But, you know, it's just, you know, if you make a few, you know, big additions here and there, I think you have a really good squad set up. And if the manager has everything right, and his setup is working and can work here, I think that's, you know, a tremendous thing. You know, I think back to the summer before the 18-19 season, before, you know, we won the Champions League. You know, we bought Allison, we bought, you know, Shaqiri, we bought Fabinho. You know, we made those big signings in those key positions, and bam, our squad just took off. And so I think there's a scenario where, you know, in terms of keeping our levels high throughout the season, you know, and of course we went through that big injury spell earlier this calendar year. You just have a little more depth in the squad, a little more refreshment, and I think you've got a tremendous setup. So Slot's really coming into, I mean, arguably like the best spot you could be as a manager, going up a level, right? Because usually when a manager goes up a level to a Liverpool or something, it's because they're, you know, maybe sacking someone, or, you know, they're not in the right, like Man United, you know, they're constantly trying to find their new manager, and the squad is just, you know, a mess, and the man, front office, everything's a mess. For us, it's just like, oh, our manager is just tired. He's just done, coaching. He's just worn out. He's just he's at it. But you bring in a new manager, and he's like, oh man, this is a great setup. We got our new, we brought back Michael Edwards. We bring it back some guys. Like it's a really good setup for managers. And I think the players recognize, like, hey, everything's all good. We bring in this manager. He's bringing in some fresh ideas, which are needed, I think, especially, kind of the way this season has ended here. It's definitely be good feels, obviously it sucks that Klopp is leaving, but I think we're all starting to turn a corner, and really, starting to accept Slot as our manager. Not that we didn't before, but we're all going to be, looking at this optimistic, kind of that new coach bounce. We're not used to that a little bit, right? That new manager bounce. So I think we're going to get a little bit of that in the summer, and then hopefully we can just continue to play at a high level throughout next season.
I think you summed up brilliantly there. I fully agree with what you're saying. I think I'm not FSG or in or out, but I think we have to give credit where credit's due. When Klopp made that announcement, we all feared for our future, for Liverpool's future, I should say. We all worried it was all going to go up the Swanee. It was all going to be over. All the things that have been built, the team that's been built was just going to disintegrate. In a few months, we've gone from being worried to optimistic. We've got to give some credit, like that the structure's been put in place. Of course, there's still bits to be done. But now we've appointed a sporting director. We appointed a head of football operations and bringing back Michael Edwards, which was, I think, the biggest thing. And then bringing in Slot at first, a load of people criticised. And of course, there will always be doubters. Every manager has their doubters. But I speak for the majority, I feel. We're all optimistic going into next season. We need some fresh ideas, some fresh input. I love Klopp to bits, I really do. And I don't think anybody will overtake him. Me personally, I think he's our best Premier League manager just for what he's done for the club on and off the pitch. But I'm going into next season, even without signing any players, I reckon something big could happen. Yes, there might be a season of transition. There will be ups and downs. Of course there will be. But it's different. It's something fresh. And I think this as you mentioned, this squad is so flexible. You know what I'm saying? Something special could happen next season. And I've got belief that it could. And I think that's a big thing for a fan, even at this stage when we still got the former manager in place, that you're thinking of next season with this team and some fresh ideas. We could go somewhere. We can do even more in the Champions League, back in there. How far can we push it? But just to finish the stream, we've got two questions. I'll give one for each of you. Brandon, I'll give the first one for you. Which do you think will break out under Slot? He thinks Elliott and Gravenberg. What's your opinion?
I personally think it's Soboslai. I think he could be a player that could really explode next year. Obviously, he's had an up and down season. He was, everybody's favorite Liverpool player of all time at the very first few games. He scored that goal against Leicester, and everybody is in love and posting pictures about the guy because they loved him so much. But now it's, he's obviously had downturn, injuries, overplayed. I think he's the guy who I think next year his consistency will be on, and then I think there's just so much you can do with him within kind of Slot system. The way he can play as a 10, he can drop back, he can play on the right, left, he can do a lot of different things. I think he would be the guy I think really could explode into what we thought he was going to be after the first couple months in the season. I think Elliott's also a great shout, but I also feel like Elliott's going to break out no matter who the manager is next season. I don't think it's necessarily nothing against Slot, obviously. It's just Elliott is a star. He's going to be a mega star no matter where he ends up. He's just that talented. And Grav's a great shout as well. I think Grav's had a little bit of a start-stop year, but I think more good than bad. But I do think Soboslai is kind of my pick for who's going to blow up next year.
That's fair. I fully agree. Especially with the start of this season, we all call him the next Gerrard. These long-range goal against Leicester, the goal against West Ham as well. And I think his injuries have just done him in a little bit. And I think the intensity of how we play has caught up with him. It's not the same in the Bundesliga. The style of play he wasn't used to. I think, considering his injury record was virtually empty, bar a couple of little bits, and then he's picked up a couple of injuries, muscle injuries, because the intensity of the football, it takes time. It's going to be a bit more possession based on the Slot. Yes, there is a bit of intensity still there, but maybe it'll suit him that little bit more and it'll keep him fit and, hopefully break out for him next season. Last question, and I'll give this up to you, Race. John mentions that, you mentioned before about needing additions Do you reckon one of them is a quality DM? Do you reckon that investment is needed there, or do you think Bajcetic and Endo are enough going to the Champions League next season?
Definitely investment needed. I think Endo was always, going to be sort of a stopgap solution, and he's well exceeded, I think, all of our expectations in coming in and looking like, like he's been playing the Premier League for multiple seasons now. But I think these last month or two of the season, I think he's been kind of poor overall. I've just haven't been impressed with him. I think it's he's hit a wall or something, and it's weird to say about a player who's 30 years old, hitting a wall, with a new team, but his first season in a new team, so maybe expected. Bajcetic, I rate really highly. I think he is going to be a tremendous player for us if hopefully he can kind of avoid the injury bug, but you don't want to overwork him, right? You don't want to. That's what has plagued him in this last year's injuries, and it wasn't necessarily from overworking. I don't think it was just kind of, you go through it as a player. Sometimes you just pick up an injury and it just kind of nags around. And I really rate him highly, but I do think a more established, whether it's a true number 6 or kind of a center mid that's more defensive, it depends on how we set up, if it's like a 4-2-3-1 with a double pivot, or if it is a 4-3-3 that they can form into at times, you need a true number 6, but some extra midfielder is definitely needed, I think, in that more defensive minded position. Just because of our prospects, we're going to be in the Champions League next season. Of course, we still expect to be up there in the Premier League. So I think you need a quality CDM there to really set the tone. I think I just think our options right now are to rotate between Endo and Bajcetic. You have one player who's still again, he's maybe still adjusting to the Premier League. And then you have a younger player who's just going to be coming back from long-term injuries, so you don't want to rush back. I think to have only those two as your true, maybe, number 6 options. And I know some people even want Bajcetic as playing further up in a number 8 or, kind of more an advanced role. I still think he can play as a number 6 for us. I think that's a position he can excel in. But I would like to bring in someone else, in that position. You look at our, kind of what our transfer moves might be this summer. I think a center back is needed just for depth. Maybe you want to push him to start and whatnot. But then that in that midfield role, in that number 6, the CDM, I think is another big need as well. So I would definitely be pushing to sign someone, and I'm sure we'll go over the prospects, to come. But definitely a position of need, I feel, for next season.
Yeah, I do feel we need a bit of something there. As you mentioned, Endo being like 32, 31, and then you've got the opposite end of the spectrum in age with Bajcetic being 19, 20, and obviously that injury, got to be careful with his growing pains that it was put down to. I do think we need someone in that mid-20s, like Matt Vifer or something like that. I know he's not class, but I reckon it's someone who knows Slot system inside out. It could really help. But either way, we need some sort of investment in that area. But that's all we have time for today, guys. Thank you very much from the guests today, and thank you all for the comments, and thank you everybody watching across both platforms. As I mentioned, I'll again, if you were on Twitter, get yourselves over to YouTube. We're going to have loads of content coming up. Please like and subscribe. Thank you very much for joining me today. From all 3 of us, thank you very much. And before we go, there is an American stream at 2:30 on for the US, the Anfield. I don't know what the actual stream name is. That's a bit embarrassing. Anfield Nights, Stars and Stripes and Anfield Nights. That is the one. American viewers. And of course, 7:30 for the rest of the week for the UK time. Thanks, guys. I'll see you the next one.